Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you'll join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, Castbox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have a wonderful show for you today. First up, Shannon Stocker will be here to celebrate Stronger at the Seams. We'll also get a chance to speak with Shannon's daughter, Cassidy. And later in the show, Amulya Veldanda will be here to celebrate I'll Be Your Friend Forever. Hey, my friends, we are really excited. Reading with Your Kids podcast is returning to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, November 9th and 10th at the Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Let your imagination come to life at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, the ultimate family play experience. Dive into hands-on fun with the hottest new toys and games, meet the inventors behind your favorite products, and even get a sneak peek at what will top holiday wish list this year. From interactive play zones to exciting competitions and exclusive giveaways, there's something for every member of the family at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. And don't miss the Young Inventor Challenge, where kids showcase their creativity and innovation. Who knows? You just might meet the next big inventor. Join us at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois, November 9th and 10th. Whether you're a game enthusiast or just looking for a fun weekend with the family, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair has it all. And like I said, the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there, and you may have a chance to be heard on the show. Get your tickets today and bring the magic of play to life. Visit shytag.com for details, and be sure to use the discount code READ, R-E-A-D, at checkout to save on tickets. Hey, my friend, Jed here. We all know that for kids to develop a lifelong passion for reading, they need to get engaged with books that spark their imaginations and interests. Wouldn't it be great if they also get interested in history and geography at the same time? That's where the great fantasy book series that kids simply can't put down, The Adventures of Jimmy and Andrew, come in. A 9-year-old boy and his 3,300-year-old telepathic dog, who is rescued from the shelter, set off for adventures around the world with Jimmy's archaeologist parents. The first book in the series, American Stonehenge, has more than 300 positive reviews. To learn more, please visit jimmyandandrew.com. That's jimmyandandrew.com. One of the things I love about Reading with Your Kids is I get to scare my guests with my energy. I also made so many great friends, and today we're going to be talking to two of them. First joining us is Shannon Stocker. She's here to celebrate her brand new middle grade novel. It's called Stronger at the Seams. Shannon, how are you?
I'm good. And it actually, even though I wrote it as a middle grade, I ended up revising it, and it's a YA. It's a young YA. Yeah.
Okay. And also hanging out over Shannon's shoulder is one of my favorite guests, Cassidy, her daughter, Cassidy. Cassidy, what's up?
Hello.
We're going to be talking to Cassidy a little bit later on about a new initiative she is starting at her school. But in the meantime, Shannon, can you tell us all about Stronger at the Seams?
Oh, I'm happy to. First of all, it's so good to see you again, and it is so wonderful to be back. I love coming on your podcast, and I just think the world of you. Stronger at the Seams was, as you just said, written as a middle grade initially. That's how I subbed it. because, as you know, kids like to read up. But there is this hole on the shelves right now for 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, because frequently YA, when it's written with a 17 or 18-year-old protagonist, it might deal with subjects or be written in such a way that it's not necessarily appropriate for 14, 15, 16-year-olds. But it's been a hard sale. So agents and editors have been acquiring these books for a long time, middle grade books that feature 8th graders and YA that feature juniors and seniors, which has left this hole. And thankfully, this imprint of HarperCollins focus called Blink decided that they were going to try and tackle some more difficult subjects, but in what they call a clean teen way. Mm-hmm. So they came back to me and said, hey, would you be willing to write this as a YA, maybe age up your protagonist 1 year, which actually ended up being perfect because that's the way I wanted to write it in the first place. I just didn't think we'd be able to sell it that way because there are so few books. So I'm super excited about it for all those reasons, because it handles the subjects of chronic illness, disability, self-advocacy, acceptance in the face of medical hardship, all these things, all these difficult topics that are so personal to me, that I'm so passionate about. And it does so in a clean way, which is great for that grouping of kids, for those freshmen and those sophomores who don't get to see themselves.
Yeah. And it is so important to be talking to kids about these issues, because so many of them are experiencing serious illnesses, or if they're not, then their friends are. And, we've talked about Cassidy and her battle with cancer and kicking cancer's butt. And so obviously seeing herself portrayed in the pages of a book like this would be wonderful, seeing somebody like her. But also Cassidy's classmates and friends, they've had to deal with this too, because somebody that they care about has been suffering. And it's, I think it's really important for us to be able to talk to those kids and give them some information, some stories that can help them understand what it is that they're feeling and dealing with.
Without a doubt. It's not only is it childhood cancer and childhood chronic illness or disabilities, not only is that more common than people recognize, but as you mentioned, for example, childhood cancer, it's about 1 out of every 285 kids that will be diagnosed with some type of cancer before they're 18 years old. Cassidy is correcting me and saying it's before it's 20, and I think that's actually correct. But within their childhood.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that, first of all, that's not nearly as rare as I wish it were. But those kids frequently have siblings. Of course, they have friends. They have uncles. They have aunts. It's amazing to me, as I have grown in this community over the last 3-4 years, since Cassidy's diagnosis in 2020, the number of people that I've gotten to know just in my community, just in Louisville and in the surrounding areas, it's heartbreaking, first and foremost. But it's an immediate family, because it's not just the kids that are affected, siblings and friends. And it's so important that these kids are able to see that this happens, and that they're able to either see themselves or grow their empathy for children who are going through these hard times. Cassidy's actually writing an oratory right now about that. I mean, like right now in this moment, as you can see over my shoulder, she's writing an oratory about this exact kind of thing because it's striking when you see somebody in a wheelchair, when you see somebody, a child who is bald, your gut reaction too often is to look away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard when you are the bald child or when you are the person in the wheelchair. That can be very painful, because you want to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen. And it feels dismissive and it hurts. And so that's been my passion and my mission. I want these kids to know that I see them, and I want other kids to see them too. And adults.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned that statistic, like 1 in 280, 290 kids. So you're talking in a typical elementary school, that's 2 kids.
Yeah.
You know, a typical elementary school of 500, 600 kids. Two of those kids in that school will suffer some kind of cancer or serious illness. That is going to affect, and it should affect everybody in that school.
Yes.
Everybody should gather around. We had a kid in my it was a year ahead of my son in elementary school, and she had very serious bone cancer, and she eventually passed from it. But during her struggle, I mean, this kid was super strong and super courageous, but it was the whole neighborhood, everybody in the school was with her in that battle, you know, supporting her, supporting the family.
You can't not be affected.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. You're right. Everybody should be affected. Cassidy had a girl in her Spanish class last year who was diagnosed with the exact same kind of brain cancer she was a month before her diagnosis. They went through treatment together at Cincinnati Children's with the same team and started off on the same type of chemo. So these are 2 kids at the same school. Now, Cassidy was in middle school at the time, and this other girl was in high school because she was 3 years older. But I mean, that just the exact same type of cancer. Right. You know, it's just not rare, and it's easy to look away. It is. But you know what? Once you open your arms, it's I would argue just as easy and a billion times more rewarding to recognize that it's there and to see these kids.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think one reason we think that it's rare is because, at least in my generation growing up, we didn't talk about this stuff. You know, there are people in my family who were in the hospital for 2 years. No one ever talked about it. It's like, where's so-and-so? He's away. You know, and it
hurts. It's so easy. And I get that. And there are even in the cancer community, we saw that from very early on. It's one of the reasons Cassidy started her YouTube channel. When she was going through treatment, she would take questions from other parents whose kids didn't want to open up and didn't want to talk, because she was willing to. So she would take questions and we would post them on her YouTube channel at the time. And that was what she did as her Gates project. Here was to be able to do this, and it was therapeutic for her. She was able to talk about things, so she wasn't sitting on her emotions, and she was able to feel like she was giving back. And that giving back ultimately is what I think gave her the most strength during her own treatment, was to be able to see and recognize and help other kids in the community. She didn't feel alone. And she felt like, hey, if I can bring a moment of joy to somebody else, it was a great distraction for her. You know,
in your note to me about Stronger at the Seams, you talk about the importance for self-advocacy.
Yeah.
And I know one of the frustrating things, I've been very blessed. I've had the same doctor for 35 years, for most of 35 years. And it's great. It's a little frustrating. I just went to have, to see him for my annual checkup. And, anytime I said, when he asked me, well, what's going on? And I would say, well, I got this ache. And he's like, yeah, it happens when you get old. And gee, I don't like that, yeah, that kind of happens. And, I'm getting shorter, doc. What's going on? Yeah, it kind of happened. So I don't like those answers, but I know for example, my mom, towards the end of her life, when I would take her, there's so many doctors and medical people who just didn't want to deal with her, and it wasn't that she was a difficult patient. It was just that I guess the doctors figured there was nothing they could do for her, and seeing her kind of bummed them out, I guess. But we hold doctors and medical people in such high regard that sometimes when they're not treating us the way that they should, we kind of be quiet and we don't speak up for ourselves.
Absolutely. There is, I think part of that is the way the system is set up. You walk into a room, they address you by your first name. They are Dr. X by their last name. You are seated on a table. They are standing over you. You are possibly in a hospital gown, feeling very vulnerable. They are in a formal white coat. There is this culture, this dynamic that has been established decades ago in this relationship. And it's almost a power dynamic. At least it feels that way. And even if a doctor comes in and doesn't assert themselves as that, or even if that doctor sees themselves as an equal and their bedside manner is wonderful and warm and kind, there's still this feeling that I don't understand everything they do. I don't know everything they do. They are the expert and I must listen. And I think that when we are patients, really need to take control of our own bodies and be able to say, you know what, maybe I don't have their training. The vast majority of us do not have their training. I did go to medical school, but I didn't do a residency. So I recognize what I know and what I don't know. But even if we don't have their training, they don't know us like we know us. Nobody knows your body the way you do. And if you are feeling something and somebody else is dismissing that, it is okay to go and get a second opinion. Mm-hmm. If you have a car that broke down and you take it to the dealership and the dealership tells you that it's going to cost you $10,000, chances are you're going to take that car and you're going to go get a second opinion from somebody else to see how much that's going to cost you. Why wouldn't you be just as careful when it's your body, when it's your health that's on the line? I think that it's really, it's a tightrope. Because we don't always know, is something really wrong? Is this anxiety? Am I just stressed? Is it just age? Is this just the way things are going to be? But that's why we have to advocate for ourselves, because sometimes all it means is one or two additional tests and you can rule out whatever it is that is concerning you. And you should be able to say, this is what I want to do. I think that that's really important. And if you have a good doctor, they will listen to you and they will take that into account.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they don't take it into account, you probably don't have a good doctor, or at least a good relationship with the doctor.
Exactly. Or maybe it's just not the right doctor for you. The whole reason I don't practice medicine, I have a number of tumors in my right arm. And I've had surgery on this arm a couple of times. And it took 7 years for me to find a diagnosis. It took 7 years for me to find a treatment. It took 5 years for me to find a diagnosis. And I know to prevent a flare of my disease that anytime I have surgery, I have to have a very particular anesthetic regimen done anytime somebody's going to cut on me. It's been a number of years since I've had surgery, but my next surgery is actually on Friday. And I have a torn tendon in my elbow. And I went to, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. And I'm struggling, and I feel my disease starting to flare, and there's a panic that's there. And I went to meet with the head of anesthesiology with this surgeon, and was all the way down this path about 3 weeks ago. And the head of anesthesiology said to me, "We don't use that medication in this hospital." And I was faced with a really difficult choice. And I wound up saying, okay, well, then this isn't the right hospital for me. And I stood up and walked out, and I went to my car and I burst into tears because it meant more pain. Mm-hmm. It meant starting over. And that's hard. Self-advocacy is hard. Mm-hmm. It is hard to stand up for yourself, and it's scary. And now I'm going in, as it turns out, I'm having surgery from a surgeon who does far more of these surgeries, mm-hmm. who is good friends with the anesthesiologist who's run my anesthesia in past surgeries. And it's all worked out for the better, but it doesn't change the fact that I was terrified. Right. When I had to do that, when I walked away from a scheduled procedure that was about to happen. Mm-hmm. I get it. Even with all my background and all my training, I know how hard it is for me. I can only imagine when you feel like you don't have that education, or you don't have that background. I know how difficult it is, but that's what we need to do for ourselves. And that's what we need to model for our kids. And that's what we need to teach our kids to do for themselves.
Absolutely. And, we were lucky. I had the chance to model this for my kids. We didn't have Stronger at the Seams when my daughter was younger, and they decided the dentist she had 4 impacted wisdom teeth. Oof. And they were going to take them all out in the same day, and they were going to do it the day before Thanksgiving. And I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And my wife, my beautiful wife, is like, oh, but the doctor said we got to do it. I goes, not the day before Thanksgiving. That's the only day you can fit us in. I can find another dentist. Don't worry about it. And better heads prevailed, and they were able to see her the day after Thanksgiving, or the Monday after Thanksgiving. So, yes, I'm really happy that that was kind of. I don't know if I was able to do that as well for myself before I became a dad, but I know when it came to my kids, and people were talking about what needed to happen in our kids' health, I was pretty adamant about, no, I'm involved in this, and I know you have a degree and you're a lot wicked smarter than me, but we're going to have some input here.
Well, I think that that's the case with all of us, though. I think when we become parents, something kicks in, something kicks in for all of us, regardless of what our background is. Because that's that mama papa bear that comes out, and it's a lot easier to advocate for our kids, but it's no less important to advocate for ourselves. And that was, as I did that, I actually went to my car and did a little video because Stronger at the Seams had just come out. And I was like, this is what this book is about. This is, if I can't do it myself, I have no right preaching to anybody else about the importance of this, especially not to kids. I've got to be able to do this for myself. And we do. It's hard. It's so hard. It really, really is. Especially when you're standing there listening to somebody in a white coat who's telling you something that doesn't feel right to you, and they're the expert and you're not. Mm-hmm. They're not the expert on you. They're the expert on that topic maybe, but they're not the expert on you. You're the expert on you.
So important. And I'm really happy the Stronger at the Seams is out there, because what a great way to start a conversation with our kids about this. And, because how do you start a conversation about advocating for yourself, just out of the blue? It's like, what are you talking about? Oh, Dad, you got a secret you got to tell me about? And it's like, no, this is a way we read this book together. We co-read it. We talk about it. A great way to have that important conversation.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful educator's guide that's available on my website as well that goes with this, that tackles so many of these questions that are really, really good questions, that are important questions. I had to write a fictionalized version of what Cassidy went through in order to be able to tackle this book, because I needed some space to be able to write it, because it was so close to my heart. And I really wanted to take a lot of Cassidy's traits and pour them into Twyla, my main character. And I wanted to take a lot of Wolfie's traits, frankly, and pour them, or Ty's traits, my son, and pour them into Wolfie. And it gave me some space to be able to do that. And I could use that way certain things that happened in her actual journey. And then I could write, because I was in the midst of everything when I was writing this book. I actually wrote a lot of this book from her bedside in the hospital over the course of 21 rounds of chemo. And I didn't necessarily want it to be about cancer. I wanted it to be about self-advocacy. And so much of this was about the journey for Twyla standing up for herself, saying, I feel these things. Why am I feeling these things? What is going on with me? And so some of the things mirror what Cassidy went through, and some of the things are just what Twyla went through. And I think that was important to me, to give it more of a universal feel for other readers. So it's not just about my journey or my daughter's journey. This is about everybody's journey who goes on a difficult, who's trying to figure out what the heck is going on with them, no matter what it may be.
How did this, not only dealing with Cassidy's struggles, fight, victory, but how did writing this book change you?
Oh, how did writing this book change me? I feel like I was changed over the course of, it makes me want to cry. So I know that this is obviously something that means a lot to me, and I'm trying to get in touch with what that is right now. The writing for the disability community, that has been meaningful to me because I am part of that community forever. And I think that this goes back to that whole, it's one thing to advocate for yourself. It's another thing to advocate for your child. When your child goes through something, I was in a coma. I was sick for 7 years and wound up in a coma, and it was a cakewalk compared to watching my child suffer through cancer. And that kind of a change, I don't know that there are words, Jed. I don't know that there are words for how that changes you as a person. I mean, I feel like I've always been a pretty empathetic person. I've always really cared about kids. When I went to med school, I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist. The irony there is just insane. Maybe that's just the university's way of preparing me for what we wound up going through. But writing this book, first of all, it let me know that I could do it. Before that, I was a picture book author. It let me know I'm capable of writing a novel. It gave me confidence to do that. But it just made me feel like, more than anything, I'm on the right track. This is my audience, whether they're 5-year-olds or whether they're 15-year-olds. The disability audience, these are my people. This is where I'm meant to be. So I don't know if that answers your question, or if
it does. It's a good answer, and I think people can relate to that. There was something that I want to make sure we have time for. Cassidy, buddy.
Hello?
You were telling me that you had, there's a new club that you started at school. Tell us all about that, please.
Well, I started a club with Abby, who is the girl who I went through treatment with at South.
And she wouldn't mind if we used her name. She'd be fine.
And I started Gifts for Gold, which is a club where we do fundraisers to raise money for children who are sick with cancer and hospitals and nurses, and collect toys, collect candy, collect all sorts of things just to help bring some joy, and books, and collect books. But we, over the summer, raised around $7,500 for a family through bake sales, and we were able to go and give them those gifts over the weekend.
That's wonderful. You know, I'm really proud to know you, Cassidy, and to call you my friend. There was Shannon posted a video of Cassidy speaking to a group, and I was so moved. And I still don't know who I'm going to vote for president, but I think Cassidy's name could be written in, just because you're an incredibly, obviously you're very strong. I wouldn't want to get in a fight with you because you'd kick my butt. You kicked Cancer's butt. I wouldn't stand a chance.
I could run away. Not sure fight, but I could run.
And I know that you're strong, you're courageous, but you also have a great deal of empathy. I think a lot of people, not only kids, who go through a struggle like you went through, would wake up one morning and go, you know what? I don't want to deal with anybody else I'm done with this, and I want to put this behind me. And you are embracing it, and you're paying it forward, and that's who should be our president.
Well, thank you.
So many people stepped up for us.
Yes.
You know, we talked about modeling earlier. There's so, especially in this community. Oh my gosh, the authors community. Holy cow, did people show up for us, sending signed books and boxes of books and toys, not just for Cassidy, but for Cassidy and Ty. And I think it was a very organic thing then for Cassidy to start doing the same thing for other people. It's really been the silver lining of this experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm honored to know you. I'm honored that you've been on the show a number of times, and I can't wait for you to write your first novel, Cassidy. Any plans? You know, I know you're writing your oratory right now, but is there a novel in the works for you?
Not right now.
No, right now she wants to be national speech champion. That's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
You got it. You're well on your way.
But writing about, and she's doing oratory because and she was just saying to me, was it just this morning that you said, I'm starting to feel really passionate about what I'm
excited about what I'm writing. Yeah.
That's great.
Because why?
Because I relate to it.
I love it. Hey, tell us where we can go to find out more about, first off, Cassie, is there a way, if people want to help with your club, is there a way we can get involved?
We are currently trying to establish Gifts for Gold as a nonprofit. It takes a long time. It takes like 6 months to establish it as a nonprofit. But once it's established, then there will be a way. So
if people wanted to donate, they could always reach out to me on my Facebook page, or I'm sorry, not my Facebook page, but on my website. And we are actively taking donations, but like she said, it's kind of because we don't have the not-for-profit established yet. You know, people could still write it off tax-wise. It's just a comfort level thing. Would you be comfortable if there are people who know me? Then obviously I think that they would trust me and know that the money is going to go toward kids with cancer. But it's very expensive also to get a not-for-profit off the ground. So that's what we are in the process of trying to do right now. It'll be a little bit, but my husband and I are working on that for her and for the club, and the support that they've had has just been phenomenal. So we're excited. They actually, before this family that they just did this fundraiser for, they brought 2 carloads of Squishmallows, literally like packed into the back of these vans. You open up the back and everything just fell out to Cincinnati Children's for Child Life to send to siblings and kids in their oncology ward. It was really cool.
Well, Cassidy, I need you to make a promise. I don't need to be the first podcast, but once the nonprofit is established, can I be like at least in the top first 5 or 6 podcasts you come on to announce it?
Sure, yes.
And Shannon, you mentioned people could go to your website to reach out. What's your website, please?
ShannonStocker.com, and it's actually kind of updated, which is a little bit of a shocker. So I've had somebody helping me with that because it was so badly out of date before. But yeah, you can reach out to me at ShannonStocker.com. All of my social media is at Shannon Stocker _. So it has this underscore. So that's Instagram, that's Twitter. You can find me on Facebook at Shannon OTTO. That's my maiden name, Shannon Otto Stocker. And it's Stronger at the Seams is available anywhere books are sold. And the audiobook, oh my gosh, the audiobook was just done by Kate Rudd, who won the Odyssey Award for The Fault in Our Stars. John Green. And it's just, she did such a lovely job with the audiobook. So and I got to record the dedication, acknowledgments, and author's note. So I was in the studio doing that. It was super exciting, and I'm thrilled. And if anybody wants a book plate, you can just reach out to me through my website and tell me who I should personalize it to and what your address is, and I'm happy to send book plates and bookmarks any place in the continental U.S.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Stronger at the Seams. It is a new YA title, young YA title from our guest, Shannon Stocker. We've also had the pleasure to speak to Cassidy. Shannon, Cassidy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back, written by Stephen Joseph and illustrated by Andy Case. In this 3rd installment of the Snoodles series, the Zoodles are determined to have their revenge. With the help of a grimy millionaire who's fallen on hard times, they intend to poison the Earth's water supply and turn everyone into willy-nillys and dilly-dallies. Can Brianna and Ricky save the Earth again? Will the outcast kids on the other side of the track rise to the challenge and help save the world? You can find out with Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Princess Naomi Helps a Unicorn, a dance-it-out creative movement story for young movers. Unicorns and horses and snakes, oh my! Interactive movement wrapped up in a charming story of sibling angst, anger management, compassion, and triumph. Fed up with her annoying sister, Naomi storms out of the castle, only to discover a unicorn in need of help. With a sense of purpose, she quickly forgets her anger. Princess Naomi is just one of the many wonderful books you can find at onceuponadance.com. A mother and daughter duo with a passion for dance and storytelling. They strive to share joyful movement, honor the beauty and discipline of ballet, and foster freedom of expression. Check it out today, onceuponadance.com. Joining us from the beautiful Garden State in New Jersey, our guest is here today to celebrate. Her brand new children's book is called I'll Be Your Friend Forever. What a beautiful title. Please welcome to the show, Amulya Veldanda Vadali. Hey, my friend, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. Thanks for having me on the show.
And did I get your name right?
You did.
All right, excellent. So I'm excited. I'm excited I got your name right in the recording. That's really great. But I'm also excited to speak to you because through the magic of technology, I am getting to look into Amalia's house, and she has this beautiful little stuffed dog behind her shoulder, and she has just a beautiful, huge smile on her face. You can tell that this book is pretty special to her.
It is, yeah.
So tell us all about it, please.
Yeah, so this book is something that I wrote in the last year. And I used to have a golden retriever. His name was Cosmo, and he was my best friend in the whole world. He passed away last May. And after he passed away, I went through a really difficult time, where I was just grieving his loss. And I wanted to write a book that would help kids and adults kind of deal with that loss, when they lose a pet. Because I think it's something that's so universal and everyone has to go through it. Like, no matter how old or young or rich or poor, no matter who you are, you will go through, like, the grief of losing someone. So I wanted to really help families who are going through that.
Yeah. And, you're right. It seems sometimes when I hear people talk like this, it's like, oh, it's a pet. It's not a human being. But we just had to say goodbye to our beagle, who lived with us for 12 or 13 years or so. And he wasn't a very pleasant dog a lot of the times, but still, it was really hard, and we miss him. And even here at the end of every evening of interviews, I would, he would hear me click off the soundboard and he would be up, and I miss that.
Yeah.
So,
I understand. Yeah. Cosmo used to he was a very, very mischievous and naughty dog. He was always up to no good. Always looking for something to steal or something to rip up. But honestly, the things we found most annoying when he was here, we missed those things the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you always aspired to write children's books?
So I have another series, which is actually about Cosmo. It's called the Diamond in the Rough series. So I started off writing those when Cosmo was still around. And he used to come to events with me, and we had a lot of fun together. So it really started off as just, like a fun way to celebrate Cosmo and like all of the things he like taught me while he was here. And then it transitioned into me really focusing on this book about grief. But ever since I was young, ever since I was 6 years old, I've always dreamed of being an author one day. In high school, I ended up getting really into science and math. So I ended up becoming a scientist, actually. I'm a biomedical engineer. And a few years ago, I decided, I can still do both. I don't have to just be a scientist. I can still make my dream of becoming an author come true. So I started publishing my stories around 2.5 years ago now.
Wonderful. So I think a lot of people think, oh, biomedical engineering, that's so much different than writing children's books. But I know engineers, and my niece is studying biomedical engineering and will be graduating in a year. And I think there's an awful lot of similarities. Can you talk a little bit about that, the similarities?
Yeah, of course. So I think probably the main thing, so I work in R&D, research and development, and specifically exploratory R&D. So I do a lot of, the work that I do is very, very creative. I basically come up with experiments to see what kind of new products we can develop as a company. So I think the number one similarity is definitely the creativity. As a scientist, I have to always be thinking about, how can we solve problems in new ways and creative ways that haven't been done before? And I think as an author, I do that all the time. It's really about how can I write a book that, hasn't been written before and would be really interesting for kids to read. So I think that's probably the number one similarity.
Yeah. When you were writing I'll Be Your Friend Forever, was that part of your grieving process?
Yes, for sure. So the book is it's written as a letter from your pet to whoever it may be. So I cried so much as I was writing the book too, because I hear Cosmo's voice, as I am reading my own work. So it was definitely very therapeutic to write it, and then also to now go back and read it with other people.
Yeah. So what's the message? What's the secret sauce, if you will, of helping kids get over and deal with that grief when they lose a pet or a friend.
Yeah, so I think kind of the message and takeaway of this book is that even though your pet may not be with you physically, they're always going to be a part of you and a part of your life. And yeah, it really, the story, it kind of starts off celebrating the good times that you shared, and then it talks about, you know, maybe they're in a better place now where they're having fun with like their other animal friends, and then afterward, it also expresses ways that maybe you can celebrate their life even though they're no longer with you. So it really stresses the idea of, you know, keep having fun and enjoying your own life, and wherever they are, they'll appreciate and really like that they see you enjoying your own life.
Yeah. Tell me, obviously, this is kind of a no-brainer. If a family just lost a pet, it's like, oh, we need to run out and get I'll Be Your Friend Forever. But I think there's value in every family reading a book like this. Can you talk a little bit about the value that a family and what kind of conversations families can have if they own a pet, or even if they don't own a pet, to experience a book like I'll Be Your Friend Forever together?
Yeah, so I've noticed a lot of families who have elder pets as well are finding a lot of value from it, because I do think it especially for younger kids who may not understand the idea of death and like where the pet is going, I think it does help to kind of visualize like, okay, after they're no longer with us, you know, they may be in a place where they're able to have fun and able to watch over you. So I think definitely in terms of having conversations about like what death is and like where your pet goes, I think the book does help parents talk to kids about that.
Yeah. It's so important. It's, you know, me and I'm almost 100 years old. When I get together with the guys I grew up with that are still here with us on Earth, we oftentimes joke because none of us lost a pet. None of our pets ever died. They all went to live on a farm somewhere. And we always used to joke when we finally started to figure it out. We're like, man, there must be 1,000 pets at that farm that all our parents send our old dogs to.
Yeah. Cosmo was actually our first pet, so I never had to experience this loss as a child. But even as an adult, it was like the hardest thing I ever went through. So I can only imagine like for a child, like how hard that must be.
Sure. Yeah. You know, it's because we do spend so much time with our pets, and you think about it, you spend more time, typically you spend more time with your dog, with your pet, than you do with your best friend, especially when you're an adult, than you do with your cousins or your siblings, your adult siblings. You might see them once or twice a year, but your dog is there with you every day.
Yeah. And so much of your schedule revolves around their schedule also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you finished, you told us that writing this book was part of your grieving process. When you came out on the other side of the book, was it, you know, I can look back and I can smile when I think of Cosmo now instead of being sad?
Yeah, for sure. I think it took a while to get there, definitely. It wasn't immediate, like after writing the book, but I think now, you know, when I read the book, I don't cry like I used to when I first started reading it. And it does make me smile when I think, you know, like he may be watching over and like celebrating, you know, me sharing this book with others.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling now, definitely.
Yeah. So cool. You mentioned that you were writing books about Cosmo before he passed. Are you planning on continuing that, or are you looking to start a new series?
Yep, yeah. So I'm planning to continue that series. There's currently 3 books in the series. The 4th one is coming out soon. That series the books are very exciting and funny, and they also all incorporate like some sort of important topic, and a lot of those topics are things that I learned from watching Cosmo. So like, for example, the first book is about courage, and as a child I used to be terrified of dogs, like just downright terrified. I couldn't even go trick-or-treating during Halloween time because I was just scared dogs would come running to the door. And Cosmo was actually the one that helped me face my fear. So he's the reason that I even wrote that first book, which is about, facing your fear and courage. And the second book is about adapting to change. I think dogs are really good at that. They just, wherever they are, whoever they're with, they're always having a great time. Third book is about, compassion, not judging others based on stereotypes, which again, dogs, they don't judge. They just give unconditional love. And then the fourth book is about gratitude. So a lot of the themes are just things that I learned from like watching Cosmo and being around him.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope to keep continuing that series. I think when I do school visits and, when I interact with kids, they really enjoy hearing those books because they're just super funny and, they love asking questions about Cosmo. And it's definitely a great way to like keep him alive and, keep kids thinking about him.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, getting back to your career in biomedical sciences and engineering, we've talked a lot here on the podcast about how hard it can be for anybody to get into engineering in the STEM fields, but especially for women, especially for young women. What kind of obstacles did you face getting into this field, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is I'm definitely on the quieter side. So I think this is something I overcame, like for being an author and for going into science. Definitely on the quieter side. So I think in terms of opportunities, like in school, like that was maybe research opportunities or even like internships. The biggest hurdle I had to cross was, getting out of my comfort zone and speaking up and asking for these different opportunities. So I think that probably was the hardest thing, especially when in a lot of these, in like classes and like groups, a lot of the other people may be men. There aren't as many women in engineering. So I think for me, it was just, learning to speak up and be heard when maybe part of me didn't want to speak up as much.
Uh-huh.
So I think, yeah.
Are you finding that those barriers that women experienced in the past, are they coming down? Do you think it's going to be easier for girls now to think about getting into the STEM fields?
Yeah, I think it definitely is getting better. I know, like, for me specifically in biomedical engineering, there were more women. So I did have women around. Some of the other fields, like maybe like electrical engineering or mechanical engineering, there's still a huge gap between how many women are joining versus men. So it might take a little bit longer for some of those fields. But I think definitely in biomedical, I do see like more and more women like knowing that this is an option and something that they can do. So I think definitely it is getting better.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. We should, before I ask you to tell us where we can go to find out more about you and more about your book, I know that it could be secret stuff, but are there any cool experiments that you're running or research that you're doing that you can tell us about, get us excited about?
Yeah, so I can tell you in general, like, what my company works on. I work at a company where we do a lot of wound products. So maybe for patients who have chronic wounds or even patients who have severe burns on their body, our products are scaffolds that you would put on that chronic wound or burn to help it heal faster, and for the skin to regenerate. So that's primarily what my company works on.
What a neat way to work in an environment where you're creating things that are going to make people's lives better.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And again, I work in kind of like the new research and coming up with new product ideas. So it's very interesting work, and it's always changing, and I'm always like learning new things. So it's really interesting.
Have you ever come up with like this really kind of off the wall idea that you've been really excited about, and you take to your boss, and your boss kind of goes, "No, that's kind of like Frankenstein. We can do something like that."
Yeah, no. So a lot of the work that I do is where we take, ideas that we have, and I specifically work on, we do in vitro experiments, which means in a plate. It's not in an animal. And we we see how cells interact in a plate with those materials. So this is like very, very early stage research. So it's not like we're putting like a leg together in like the lab or anything like that. But that would be fun though.
Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about I'll Be Your Friend Forever and find out more about you.
So my website is www.avvbooks.com. And there's a lot of information there about me and also about Cosmo.
Wonderful. And do we get to see a picture of Cosmo?
Yes, yeah. His picture is everywhere. Yeah.
That's wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of I'll Be Your Friend Forever. Wonderful picture book from our guest, Amulya Veldanda Vadali. My friend, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show, Jed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Till then, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guests, Shannon and Cassidy Stocker. Please be sure to check out Stronger at the Seams. I also want to thank Amulya Veldanda. Please check out I'll Be Your Friend Forever. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.